When working with electrical equipment, safety and code compliance are paramount. Specifically, when dealing with an 800 amp main disconnect switch located next to an exterior wall and rated for NEMA 3R, it is crucial to adhere to the National Electrical Code, or NEC, guidelines regarding clearances. A question arises concerning the presence of a hose bib located under the switch and the necessary distance for its relocation to ensure compliance and safety. According to the NEC, there are specific clearance requirements that must be observed around electrical disconnect switches to provide sufficient space for qualified personnel to safely operate and maintain the equipment. These clearances are designed to minimize the risk of electrical hazards and ensure easy access for maintenance and emergency situations. One of the primary requirements outlined in the NEC is the minimum clearance in front of the electrical disconnect switch. This clearance is intended to provide ample room for an electrician or qualified person to stand and maneuver while operating the switch, conducting inspections, or performing maintenance tasks. The NEC mandates a minimum of 6 feet of clearance in front of an electrical disconnect switch. This distance allows for safe operation and provides sufficient space to avoid accidental contact with energized parts. In addition to the clearance in front of the switch, the NEC also specifies minimum clearances on all other sides of the switch. These side clearances ensure that personnel can access the switch from various angles and that there is adequate space for maintenance and repairs. The NEC requires a minimum of 3 feet of clearance on all other sides of the electrical disconnect switch. This clearance provides sufficient space for personnel to move around the switch, inspect connections, and perform necessary tasks without obstruction. Considering these NEC requirements, the relocation of the hose bib near the 800 amp main disconnect switch must adhere to these clearance guidelines. To ensure compliance and safety, the hose bib should be relocated at least 6 feet away from the front of the disconnect switch. This distance will provide ample space for personnel to operate the switch safely and without obstruction. Furthermore, the hose bib should be relocated at least 3 feet away from all other sides of the disconnect switch. This clearance will ensure that personnel can access the switch from various angles and that there is sufficient space for maintenance and repairs. It is important to note that these clearances are minimum requirements, and in some cases, additional clearance may be necessary to accommodate specific site conditions or equipment configurations. Factors such as the presence of other equipment, obstructions, or potential hazards may necessitate increasing the clearance distances to ensure adequate safety and accessibility. When planning the relocation of the hose bib, it is essential to consider the surrounding environment and any potential hazards that may exist. For example, if the area around the disconnect switch is prone to flooding or water accumulation, it may be necessary to relocate the hose bib further away to prevent water from coming into contact with the electrical equipment. Similarly, if there are other utilities or equipment located nearby, it may be necessary to adjust the location of the hose bib to avoid interference or potential conflicts. In addition to adhering to the NEC clearance requirements, it is also important to consider local codes and regulations that may apply to the installation and maintenance of electrical equipment. Local jurisdictions may have additional requirements or restrictions that must be followed to ensure compliance and safety. Therefore, it is advisable to consult with local authorities or qualified electrical inspectors to determine any specific requirements that may apply to the relocation of the hose bib. When performing any electrical work, it is crucial to prioritize safety and take appropriate precautions to prevent accidents and injuries. Only qualified and licensed electricians should perform electrical work, and all work should be performed in accordance with applicable codes and standards. Before commencing any work on the electrical disconnect switch or nearby equipment, it is essential to de-energize the circuit and verify that the power is off using appropriate testing equipment. Lockout and tagout procedures should be followed to prevent accidental re-energization of the circuit while work is in progress. Personal protective equipment, or PP, such as safety glasses, gloves, and insulated tools, should be worn at all times to protect against electrical hazards. Additionally, workers should be trained in proper safety procedures and be aware of the potential risks associated with electrical work. Regular inspections and maintenance of electrical equipment are essential to ensure continued safety and reliability. Disconnect switches should be inspected periodically for signs of damage, corrosion, or loose connections. Any issues should be addressed promptly to prevent potential hazards. Additionally, the area around the disconnect switch should be kept clear of obstructions and debris to ensure easy access for maintenance and emergency situations. In conclusion, when relocating a hose bib near an 800 amp main disconnect switch, it is crucial to adhere to the NEC clearance requirements to ensure safety and code compliance. The hose bib should be relocated at least 6 feet away from the front of the disconnect switch and at least 3 feet away from all other sides. Consideration should also be given to local codes and regulations, potential hazards, and the surrounding environment. By following these guidelines and taking appropriate safety precautions, it is possible to relocate the hose bib safely and effectively while maintaining the integrity of the electrical system. Remember that electrical work should always be performed by qualified and licensed electricians, and safety should be the top priority at all times. Prior to working on electrical equipment or circuits, verify that circuits are energized and follow proper lockout and tagout procedures. Always wear the appropriate personal protective equipment, or PPE, to safeguard against electrical hazards and ensure a safe working environment. Regular inspections and maintenance of electrical equipment and adherence to established safety protocols can help prevent accidents and ensure the continued reliability of electrical systems. Firstly, understanding the NEC requirements is the first step in ensuring that the electrical installations are done safely and in compliance with standards. Secondly, when dealing with a disconnect switch such as the 800 amp main disconnect switch discussed, knowing the required clearance distances is crucial. Thirdly, maintaining these clearances helps prevent electrical hazards and allows for easy access during maintenance and emergency situations. Fourthly, the NEC mandates a minimum of 6 feet clearance in front of the electrical disconnect switch, providing ample space for operation and maintenance. Fifthly, the NEC requires a minimum of 3 feet of clearance on all other sides of the electrical disconnect switch, ensuring accessibility from various angles. Sixthly, the location of a hose bib near the electrical disconnect switch must comply with these clearance guidelines. Seventhly, relocating the hose bib at least 6 feet away from the front of the disconnect switch and at least 3 feet away from all other sides ensures compliance and safety. Eighthly, consider the surrounding environment, potential hazards, and local codes when planning the relocation of the hose bib. Ninthly, prioritizing safety and adhering to appropriate precautions is paramount when performing any electrical work. Tenthly, only qualified and licensed electricians should perform electrical work, following all applicable codes and standards to mitigate risks. Remember, these clearances are minimum requirements and may need to be increased depending on specific site conditions and equipment configurations. Always consider the surrounding environment and potential hazards when planning the relocation of the hose bib. Consult local authorities or qualified electrical inspectors to determine any specific requirements that may apply. Prioritize safety, follow appropriate precautions, and ensure that all electrical work is performed by qualified and licensed electricians to maintain a safe and compliant electrical system. When assessing the location for the hose bib in relation to the electrical disconnect, consider the potential for water exposure. Electrical equipment and water are a dangerous combination, so the farther away the hose bib is, the better. If water were to come into contact with the electrical disconnect, it could create a shock hazard or cause damage to the equipment. Therefore, consider the trajectory of the water spray and the potential for splashing when determining the placement of the hose bib. Also, think about the accessibility of the disconnect switch. You want to ensure that there's enough space for someone to safely operate the switch without being hindered by the hose bib. This means considering the reach required to access the switch handle and ensuring that the hose bib isn't positioned in a way that would obstruct movement or create a tripping hazard. If the disconnect switch is located in a high traffic area, it's even more important to maintain adequate clearance. People may be passing by frequently, and you don't want them to accidentally bump into the switch or the hose bib. Therefore, consider the flow of traffic and ensure that there's enough space for people to move around safely. In addition to the NEC requirements, it's also important to consider any local codes or regulations that may apply. These codes may have additional requirements for clearance around electrical equipment or specific regulations for the placement of water sources. It's always a good idea to check with your local building department to ensure that you're in compliance with all applicable codes. When planning the relocation of the hose bib, it's also important to consider the long-term maintenance of the electrical disconnect. You want to ensure that there's enough space for technicians to access the switch for inspections, repairs, and upgrades. This means considering the tools and equipment that may be needed and ensuring that there's enough room to maneuver them safely. If the disconnect switch is located outdoors, it's important to protect it from the elements. This may involve installing a weatherproof enclosure or providing some other form of protection from rain, snow, and sun. When relocating the hose bib, be sure to consider the potential impact on the electrical disconnect's protection from the elements. You don't want to create a situation where water can easily enter the enclosure or damage the equipment. Another factor to consider is the aesthetics of the installation. While safety and code compliance are the top priorities, you also want to ensure that the hose bib and disconnect switch are installed in a way that looks neat and professional. This may involve concealing the plumbing lines or using decorative covers to enhance the appearance of the installation. Ultimately, the goal is to relocate the hose bib in a way that meets all safety and code requirements while also being practical, accessible, and aesthetically pleasing. This requires careful planning, attention to detail, and a thorough understanding of the relevant regulations and best practices. Remember, working with electrical equipment can be dangerous, so it's always best to consult with a qualified electrician to ensure that the job is done safely and correctly. When relocating the hose bib, think about the type of materials used for the plumbing. You want to ensure that the materials are compatible with the electrical equipment and that they won't corrode or degrade over time. For example, you may want to use copper or PVC pipes, depending on the specific application. Also, consider the potential for freezing temperatures. If the hose bib is located in an area that's subject to freezing, you'll need to take steps to protect the pipes from bursting. This may involve insulating the pipes or installing a freeze-proof hose bib. When connecting the hose bib to the water supply, be sure to use appropriate fittings and connectors. You want to ensure that the connections are secure and watertight to prevent leaks. Leaks can not only waste water but also create a potential hazard if they come into contact with electrical equipment. If you're not comfortable working with plumbing, it's best to hire a qualified plumber to do the job. Plumbing can be tricky, and you don't want to risk damaging the pipes or creating a leak. When planning the relocation of the hose bib, consider the potential for future expansion or modifications. You may want to leave some extra space around the disconnect switch to accommodate future upgrades or changes. This can make it easier to perform maintenance or install new equipment in the future. Another factor to consider is the potential for vandalism. If the disconnect switch or hose bib is located in an area that's prone to vandalism, you may want to take steps to protect it. This may involve installing a security fence or using tamper-resistant hardware. If the disconnect switch is located near a public area, it's important to ensure that it's properly labeled. This will help prevent accidental contact and ensure that people are aware of the potential hazards. The label should be clear, concise, and easy to read. It should also comply with all applicable safety standards. When relocating the hose bib, consider the potential impact on the surrounding landscaping. You want to ensure that the landscaping is not damaged or disturbed during the relocation process. This may involve protecting plants, trees, and other vegetation. If the hose bib is located near a building, it's important to ensure that it's properly grounded. This will help prevent electrical shocks and ensure that the building's electrical system is safe. The grounding should comply with all applicable codes and standards. When relocating the hose bib, consider the potential for noise. You want to ensure that the relocation process does not create excessive noise that could disturb neighbors or tenants. This may involve using noise-dampening materials or scheduling the work during off-peak hours. If the hose bib is located near a sensitive area, such as a hospital or school, it's even more important to minimize noise. When planning the relocation of the hose bib, consider the potential for environmental impact. You want to ensure that the relocation process does not harm the environment or pollute the surrounding area. This may involve using environmentally friendly materials or taking steps to prevent erosion and runoff. If the hose bib is located near a waterway or a wetland, it's even more important to protect the environment. In summary, relocating a hose bib near an 800 amp main disconnect switch requires careful planning and attention to detail. You need to consider the NEC requirements, local codes, safety concerns, plumbing issues, environmental factors, and the potential for future expansion. By taking all of these factors into account, you can ensure that the job is done safely, correctly, and in compliance with all applicable regulations. And remember, when in doubt, it's always best to consult with a qualified electrician or plumber to ensure that the job is done right. Consider any potential obstructions that may interfere with the required clearance. This includes nearby walls, fences, or other structures. If there are any obstructions, you may need to adjust the location of the hose bib to ensure that you maintain the minimum clearance. Think about the direction of sunlight and its potential impact on the electrical equipment. Direct sunlight can cause the equipment to overheat, which can lead to malfunctions or even fires. If the disconnect switch is exposed to direct sunlight, you may need to provide some form of shading or protection. Consider the prevailing wind direction and its potential impact on the water spray from the hose bib. If the wind typically blows in the direction of the electrical equipment, you may need to relocate the hose bib to prevent water from spraying onto the equipment. Think about the potential for ice buildup during the winter months. Ice can damage the plumbing and electrical equipment, so you need to take steps to prevent it from forming. This may involve insulating the pipes or installing a heating cable. Consider the potential for insects and rodents to nest near the electrical equipment. Insects and rodents can damage the equipment and create a fire hazard, so you need to take steps to prevent them from nesting. This may involve sealing any openings in the enclosure or using pest control measures. Think about the potential for corrosion to occur on the electrical equipment. Corrosion can damage the equipment and lead to malfunctions, so you need to take steps to prevent it from occurring. This may involve using corrosion-resistant materials or applying a protective coating. Consider the potential for vibration to occur near the electrical equipment. Vibration can damage the equipment and lead to malfunctions, so you need to take steps to minimize it. This may involve using vibration dampening materials or isolating the equipment from the source of vibration. Think about the potential for electromagnetic interference to occur near the electrical equipment. Electromagnetic interference can disrupt the operation of the equipment, so you need to take steps to minimize it. This may involve using shielded cables or installing a filter. Consider the potential for static electricity to build up near the electrical equipment. Static electricity can damage the equipment and create a fire hazard, so you need to take steps to prevent it from building up. This may involve using grounding straps or installing a static discharge mat. Think about the potential for lightning strikes to occur near the electrical equipment. Lightning strikes can damage the equipment and create a fire hazard, so you need to take steps to protect it. This may involve installing a lightning rod or surge suppressor. Consider the potential for power surges to occur in the electrical system. Power surges can damage the equipment, so you need to take steps to protect it. This may involve installing a surge protector or uninterruptible power supply. Think about the potential for brownouts to occur in the electrical system. Brownouts can damage the equipment, so you need to take steps to protect it. This may involve installing a voltage regulator or uninterruptible power supply. Consider the potential for blackouts to occur in the electrical system. Blackouts can disrupt the operation of the equipment, so you need to take steps to prepare for them. This may involve installing a generator or uninterruptible power supply. Think about the potential for the electrical system to overload. Overloading the electrical system can damage the equipment, so you need to take steps to prevent it. This may involve installing a larger service panel or load shedding system. Consider the potential for the electrical system to short circuit. Short circuits can damage the equipment and create a fire hazard, so you need to take steps to prevent them. This may involve using circuit breakers or fuses. Think about the potential for the electrical system to ground fault. Ground faults can create a shock hazard, so you need to take steps to prevent them. This may involve using ground fault circuit interrupters or ground fault protection systems. Remember that all of these factors should be considered when relocating the hose bib near the 800 amp main disconnect switch. Taking all of these precautions will ensure the safety and reliability of the electrical system.